She slipped through the woods with the agility of one well used to nocturnal ramblings, knowing how to pick her way along the meandering path, regardless of the moon's milky glow that shone through the thickets of hazel and birch. She hummed low to herself a verse that was popular amongst the young girls in her village. Rose petals, red and white, he that I marry, come to me this night. It was custom for maidens on midsummer's night to make potions to bind their admirers in love and matrimony, and Emma Loxley needed only one more addition to a concoction she had ready, leaves that could only be harvested after nightfall. She moved on further into the wood, her thoughts on the son of one of her father's friends, a handsome boy who was much admired among her circle of friends for his pleasing manner and brilliant blue eyes. Emma smiled to herself, pulling her cloak tight against the chill air. She was dressed for concealment, wearing a grey cloak over a brown wool dress, clothing she had changed into after her parents had retired for the night, before she slipped from her ground floor bedroom window and slipped from the grounds. As she wandered, the path narrowed and disappeared in parts. She stopped at a gap in the trees, a clearing of sorts. The area seemed strangely unfamiliar to her in the moonlight. Emma had wandered further this night than ever before. She had missed the church bells chime the hour. The sounds of the outside world failed to pierce the dense canopy. Branches crossed above her head, creating a network of tunnels where even the moonlight found it hard to penetrate. As she turned to make her way back to the more familiar path, she noticed the dark pointed leaves that she required, pulled a small knife from the pocket of her dress, and proceeded to cut several stalks low from the base, careful to leave enough of the plant behind. So absorbed was she in her task that she didn't notice the stranger until she was nearly upon him. He walked upon the hummock between the ring of gnarled and ancient rowan trees, where the ground rose up to a point, past the twisted branches to resemble a bald pate above a broken crown. An old place, the heart of the forest, it was said, a place she had never trod, as the light grew dimmer and the trees formed a ring that scratched and pulled at the wanderer who had strayed from the path. It was an area of the forest that local law guarded against, with tales of strange noises and lights. Emma pulled herself up smartly, and half hidden behind the stout trunk of an oak, she observed the wanderer. He appeared to be of above average height, with a shoulder-length golden hair that shone in the moonlight as he moved about the hill. He looked to be well dressed, like a nobleman in his frock coat, waistcoat and breeches, each of a different woodland hue, the greens and browns of bark and leaf. He wore knee-length hunting boots, the leather bright as a new chestnut. A most beautiful creature, he strode with what purpose she could not tell. His long limbs moving with fluid grace, he seemed a part of the moss-covered hill he walked upon, as if he had appeared from the earth itself. Unable to take her eyes off the stranger, Emma moved from tree to tree, until he seemed close enough to touch, until finally, as if in a dream, she stepped out from behind the cover of the trees to face him, a bird released from a trap with no choice but to fly towards danger. The walker between the trees turned on his heel, sensing her, then moved towards the slight figure of the girl in the grey cloak, whose wide eyes shone at his approach. The stitching on his waistcoat glinted in the moon's light as he neared. Her eyes were drawn to a face of contradictions, ancient yet youthful. His skin was white as the light that the moon poured down, white as bone bleached in the sun, pale as the ice in the village pond in midwinter, pale and cold as death. My name is Fiona Hogan, and I write in a mix of genres, from horror to humorous, romantic fiction, and I'm also a poet and blogger. I suppose you would say I write full-time. I'm constantly writing, but it doesn't support me. You know, it's not a hobby. It's something that I have to do. But I've also set up my own company, which I'm hoping will kind of keep me going until my writing, kicks off, and I'm obviously too rich to have to do anything else. I suppose I fit everything in around my writing. I always have done, you know. Even when I mean, I've got 5 children. I have a very busy life, but I've always written. And it's not something I would ever think about. It's just something that I just do. So any moment I get, you know, if I have an idea, it could be 3 o'clock in the morning, I could be writing a story. Or I could wake up in the night with an idea and write a story. Or I could think of something in my head when I'm driving the children to school. It's just, I find time for it. I don't have to think about it. I just do it. Yes. Yeah, they're very supportive, you know. They're always telling their friends about me writing. And when I had my launch last year, they were very good. They were in helping sort everything up, you know, out, and giving out the mulled wine and inviting all their friends to bring their mothers along so they would buy my books. So no, they're great. I think it depends on what story or project I'm doing. I'm writing, at the moment, I'm writing a psychological horror that's set in England, and it's taken me a while to write because it actually does require a lot of research. It's an idea that I originally had, and about somebody who's possessed, who moves into a house, who there's the story of a woman who's lived in Victorian times, who's kind of a herbalist, but also, you know, a little bit of a witch. And I'm struggling at the moment because I'm not sure whether to set it in the 1600s, or if I set it in Victorian times. Though, you know, the last witch was killed, I think, in England in the 1700s. So it's research plays a lot in that story. So I have to have everything right, and I also have to do a lot of research for, you know, plants and the background. And when I get enough money, I will actually go over to the South Downs and research, because there's a limit to what you can do online. But for my book, which I'm hoping to launch, you know, this year in maybe spring, it's set in Dublin, so I've got a lot of. I mean, I lived in Dublin for years, so it's easier. It depends on the project, it really does. But I do find the research is exciting, and it brings out a lot more when you have to go looking into something, and it makes much more of the story, you know. It's a huge difference. It's a huge learning curve. I did a kind of an online course because it's something I've always been really interested in. But I'm coming at it, you know, from a writer's point of view. So I have everything in my head when I'm writing a story. You know, I put down what I want the readers to discover about a character. I tell them everything, you know. Well, obviously you leave certain bits you want surprise, and you do, you know, some foreshadowing and stuff like that. But with screenwriting, it's a totally different animal. I mean, it's what you can't put in. You have to leave so much out that basically you totally change your story around, and you actually discover different things about the story. You know, if you're thinking, what if this person was sitting here, and, you know, what if this happened? I don't know if you can make it the same story when you're doing it, you know, for the screen. I think you're going to have to keep adding different bits because it's so much more visual, you know, and that's harder for me to kind of get and the dialogue as well. The dialogue kind of drives it. So I think it's going to be a huge learning curve, but I'm really enjoying it. Oh, well, when I've written like, say, a short story or a novel, I would just leave it for a while, because if I look, you spend so much time on something, you actually end up hating it. So I have to leave it, because if I go back to it too soon, I'll just rip it to shreds. Or I might even just throw it in a cupboard and not look at it again. So I have to leave it for a certain amount of time, then I'll go back and I will reread it, I'd say 2 or 3 times. And then I basically just cut the hell out of it, you know, cut it and cut it and cut it. But I don't throw everything away. If there's the good bits that I like, I'll put them away and I'll keep them for something else. But no, you just have to be brutal, you know. And you have to pare it and pare it until you're left with something that you actually might be proud of. Might be. You generally do end up hating your stuff anyway. Every now and then you read it and you go, well, that's not too bad. Or someone says something nice about it, or you get a good review. But I don't think you ever really, really like what you've written. Getting down to it. I'm a terrible procrastinator, especially with the internet. The internet's a nightmare. You know, you go into research something and then you end up on Facebook, or someone sends you a message, or I'm in so many different social media groups, writing groups, which are brilliant for help and support. but you're constantly, it's notifications, notifications. And also, you know, if someone's asking you a question about your book or something, you kind of have to get back to them. So I find I just have to cut out all of that. I just have to just force myself to do it. I have to, and I always feel brilliant after I've done some writing. But when I don't write, it feels like homework. It feels like that Sunday night feeling when you have to get down to it and you really just don't want to. But once you do it, it's brilliant, you know. So I mean, I should just do it all the time. I'd feel amazing if I did. But yeah, I just find other things to do, you know. I think I'm a confident writer. I've got past that. I denied that I was a writer for years and years and years. And I used to only talk about it when I'd had a few drinks. I want to be a writer, you know. I've got all these ideas that I've been writing. I've been writing poetry for years, but nobody ever saw anything. No one saw any of my writing until I put my first book on Amazon. And then the people were really surprised because they couldn't believe I'd actually done something. So once I came to the point of being able to, you know, stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Fiona and I'm a writer," that kind of went by the wayside, and I just got on with it. Story comes first, but like story is the characters. So you couldn't have the story without the characters. So obviously, when I have a story, I have people in it that are doing certain things, but I might not have the characters wouldn't be developed. So yeah, I'd have to say story, because even in the book that I'm writing at the moment, the protagonist, she's gone through about 10 different names at this stage. I don't even have a proper name for it yet. That's just a problem that I always have, you know, picking the right names for characters. But the character would be developed at that stage. But no, the story always comes first for me.